So if you threw your head back, close your eyes, and envisioned what might be there, what might be there?
You know, I think it would have to be something that tied in both with the park system, Lawton Park that's across Clinton there, and also with the neighborhood. You've got the Bloomingdale neighborhood there and the Wells Street corridor. I see it as a mixed use of both businesses and residential. Perhaps, you know, I don't really see a large-scale development necessarily. I've been on record saying I am not a fan of bringing a casino to Fort Wayne, and I know a lot of folks have that kind of eyeballed for up there, and I just don't think that that's a good fit for Fort Wayne right now for a number of reasons, or really ever.
Good fit for Fort Wayne?
I don't know that it was. Yeah, I don't think it was. You know, in many ways, you know, that kind of gaming is just regressive taxation. It's the people who can least afford it are those that are partaking, and for a city to be seeking revenues off of that is a little distasteful to me.
Do you think the city's going in the right direction in general?
I don't. I think that we are meandering. I think we as a community are on a Sunday afternoon stroll, and meanwhile the rest of the world understands that it's Monday morning and they've got to get to work. And we are being left behind as a community. You can see that in what our average wage has fallen to. We are not keeping up with the rest of the state or with the nation in terms of what our citizens are earning. And granted, we have a low cost of living here, but we will be stuck in that cycle if we don't address it. We have to do something to...
Do you know what it's like to travel in the rest of the world when you have a relatively low income here?
I do.
You go to Ethiopia and feel poor.
Well, you get sticker shock when you travel. That's for certain. And we take it for granted here in Fort Wayne, the cost of living and the availability of certain amenities. But
John Stafford, remember,
John.
Perhaps you were there at the first Legacy presentation. I'm sure John's given this presentation before. He noted that we have a low cost of living, but that the cost of living has stayed about the same over these years, whereas the wage has gone down precipitously from someplace around 105% of the national average, or maybe more, over the last 30 years since Harvester pulled out, to 85, 86, 87% of the national
I have
average.
a copy of the graph sitting on the counter over there, actually, as a reminder. This is a priority. This has to be a priority for us as a community. And that we're stuck in that cycle, while, I mean, yes, our cost of living has stayed low, our wages have dropped, and so really the benefit to the community has decreased, because it used to we had a higher than average wage and the low cost of living, but as those two have kind of come together, it's not the benefit it used to be. That's your point, right?
But yes, as a mayor, then to achieve a higher quality of life and a higher set of incomes, we're no longer looking at bringing foundries to town.
That's right. I mean, part of the shift is in what's happening nationwide in terms of successful businesses. I mean, in Fort Wayne, we're very lucky because we have a diversity of industries here. A lot of residents wouldn't necessarily look at it that way, but I do. This is kind of my business perspective. When a company, or a small business or large business for that matter, has too much of their percentage of client tied up with one company, they're in trouble. So communities that are tied, Fort Wayne has a huge cluster of defense industry companies. We have insurance industry companies. We have biomedical industries, and we have manufacturing. Those four alone, and there are many others. Those are some of the major ones. But that diversity actually buffers us from some of the ebbs and flows and fortunes of industries.
Sure.
We would not be completely devastated as a community. It might feel devastating that Navistar is leaving Fort Wayne, and certainly psychologically it is, because we were always proud that we maintained that last vestige of Harvester, and we got the good part. You know, we had the research and development team. Those were the best jobs. Now that's going.
And those are the high-paying jobs.
That's right. Those are the high-paying jobs. But we're bringing in companies like Great Batch Medical, which is establishing their research and development team here in Fort Wayne.
And how many employees is that?
They are going to have about 80 to 100. But the average wage is going to be in excess of $75,000. So that's...
Well, that's always been one of my questions for community leaders is, what kind of, there are two routes to take. Do we look at the future and try to determine what kind of community we wish to build, what kind of jobs, what sorts of industries to attract, or do we sit back and make it a laissez-faire approach? Let's, que sera, sera.
Well, I think you could tell from my Sunday afternoon stroll analogy that I don't think that we should lean back.
But
part of it is
that's
you
sort
work
of a
with what you've
typical
already
Republican
got.
approach, though, is that we, hands off the private sector, let it develop in its own ways.
Well, I mean, there's a variance between doing as little as possible to intervene in the success of private sector enterprise and making sure that as a community that you are attracting jobs that are sustaining your citizenry. So what we do is form relationships with our existing companies. Something that's been talked about a lot right now in economic development circles is the fact that with this defense industry cluster, something that would really cement that relationship in Fort Wayne, Indiana, is if we as a community found a way to fund a radio lab, a communications lab, because most of our defense industry companies are tied to communications, and the Army is looking for a location for this lab and a community to host it. The ticket price on that is $500,000 to $600,000. It's an infrastructure investment, and I think that it could pay huge dividends in terms of, again, cementing this community as a top-tier supplier to the defense industry.
And the current administration has not taken the effort to bring it down?
No.
And you would?
Absolutely. That's the kind of thing that we need to be doing. I mean, when you talk, I mean, that goes beyond individual companies. That is working with an entire industry, an entire sector. And that when you're looking at expanding the field for the companies that are in your community, you talk to the existing companies and find out why they're here, why Fort Wayne over somewhere else, because most companies of any size at all have gone through that thought process. So it would be good for us to know why they stay here, or if they're thinking about leaving. If they are in fact happy to be here, then who are they doing business with that it might be advantageous for them to be here as well? Whether it's customers or suppliers, up and down the supply chain, talk to those companies and you start to grow organically. And there's a difference between, you can do a lot to set up a community and attract certain industries. We are extremely well positioned from a logistics perspective. I've had lots of conversations with companies that that is a part of why they're located. They've located here.